The day Ikemefuna almost gave up on his dreams began like every other difficult morning. The sun had barely risen when he sat quietly on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, while his mind carried the heavy weight of another rejection. In the small room they shared, Ego-Oyibo was already awake, tying her hair while humming softly, as if life was not as hard as it truly was. Ikemefuna rubbed his face and sighed deeply. "I don't know how long we can keep doing this," he said quietly. Ego-Oyibo turned and looked at him with calm eyes. "Doing what?" she asked, pretending everything would be fine. She walked closer and sat beside him. "Ike," she said gently, "one day people will know your name." Ikemefuna shook his head. "Right now they only know how to reject me." Ego-Oyibo laughed softly. "That means they are learning your name slowly." Ikemefuna looked at her, confused. "You really believe that?" "I don't believe it," she replied, squeezing his hand. "I know it." Those were the words that kept him going. Every day he chased opportunities that always seemed just out of reach. Sometimes he returned home tired and frustrated, but Ego-Oyibo would still greet him with the same smile, as if he had come back with good news. One evening, after a particularly long day, Ikemefuna entered the room and dropped his bag on the floor. "I'm tired," he said. Ego-Oyibo was stirring something in a pot. "Tired of working?" she asked. "No, tired of trying." She stopped staring and turned slowly. "You promised me something, Ike." He frowned. "What promise?" "You said we would never quit." Ikemefuna sighed deeply. "Maybe dreams are not for people like us." Ego-Oyibo walked to him and gently lifted his chin so he would look at her. "Listen carefully," she said. "One day you will stand in front of crowds. Cameras will follow you. People will celebrate you." Ikemefuna laughed bitterly. "That sounds like a fairy tale." Ego-Oyibo smiled. "Then let us live inside the fairy tale until it becomes real." He stared at her for a long moment. "You really believe in me that much?" "I believed in you before you believed in yourself." Those words settled deeply in his heart. But neither of them knew that the dream they were chasing together would one day become the very thing that would try to separate them. And the first sign of that future appeared the night a stranger called Ikemefuna with an opportunity that could change everything. An opportunity that would quietly begin to test the love they once thought nothing could break. Ikemefuna's phone rang late that night when he was already half asleep. The strange number almost made him ignore the call, but something inside him pushed him to answer. "Hello," he said slowly. A confident voice replied from the other end. "Am I speaking with Ikemefuna?" "Yes." "This is about the project you submitted months ago." Ikemefuna suddenly sat upright. "My project?" "Yes," the man replied. There was a short pause before the voice continued, calm and certain. "We want to work with you." For a moment, Ikemefuna could not speak. His heart began beating fast. "Are you serious?" he asked finally. "Very serious," the voice replied. When the call ended, Ikemefuna jumped out of bed. "Ego! Ego!" he shouted. Ego-Oyibo rushed out from the other room. "What happened?" "They accepted it." She stared at him in confusion. "Accepted what?" "My idea. They want to work with me." For a moment, she said nothing. Then suddenly, she hugged him tightly. "I told you," she shouted joyfully. "I told you it would happen." Ikemefuna laughed loudly as he lifted her off the floor. "It's happening. It's finally happening." That night, they barely slept as excitement filled the small room they shared. They talked about the future as if it had already arrived. "Soon we will move to a bigger house," Ikemefuna said with bright eyes. Ego-Oyibo smiled gently. "I don't care about a bigger house." Ikemefuna looked surprised. "What do you care about then?" "You," she replied softly. He frowned slightly. "Me? Why?" Ego-Oyibo looked directly into his eyes. "Because I don't want success to change you." Ikemefuna laughed confidently. "That will never happen." Ego-Oyibo remained serious. "Promise me something." "Anything," he replied quickly. "No matter how big you become, don't forget the small life we built together." Ikemefuna held her hand firmly.
I promise. But promises made in quiet rooms sometimes struggle to survive in loud places. The project quickly became successful. People started calling Ikemefuna. Meetings turned into interviews, and interviews turned into recognition. Slowly, recognition began turning him into someone the world wanted to see everywhere. But as his name started rising higher, something else began disappearing quietly. The time he used to give the woman who had believed in him from the very beginning. And one night, months later, Ego-Oyibo would sit alone at a dinner table waiting for him, not knowing that the distance between them had already begun to grow.
Success did not enter Ikemefuna's life like a gentle visitor. It came like a flood. One good project opened the door for another, and soon his phone never stopped ringing. People wanted meetings, interviews, pictures, and appearances. His face began to show up in places he once only passed by and admired from a distance. He bought better clothes, moved into a finer house, and drove the kind of car that made people stop and stare. Everywhere he went, he was greeted with respect. "Ikemefuna, you are doing well," people told him. "You are inspiring people." He smiled, shook hands, and thanked them, but each new day pulled him farther from the quiet life he had once shared with Ego-Oyibo. At first, she tried to keep up with the new rhythm. She helped him choose outfits, adjusted his collar before events, and smiled proudly beside him whenever cameras flashed. "Stand close to him," someone would say. "Madam, smile." And she would smile. But when they returned home, the silence between them grew heavier. One evening, she set the table and waited with his favorite meal growing cold. She checked the time again and again until the gate finally opened long after night had settled. When Ikemefuna entered, he was still on a call. Yes, move the meeting to tomorrow," he said, walking past her. "I will send the final approval in the morning." He ended the call and loosened his tie. Ego-Oyibo looked at him quietly. "You are late again," she said. "I know," he replied, glancing at his phone. "It was an important meeting." "Everything is important now except this house," she said. Ikemefuna sighed. "Ego, please, not tonight. I'm tired." She looked at the untouched plates on the table. "You always say you are tired. Do you know I waited for you for 3 hours?" He dropped his keys carelessly. "I'm doing all this for us." Ego-Oyibo gave a faint, painful smile. "That is what you always say. But this us you keep talking about, I hardly see it anymore." He stared at her for a moment, but instead of answering with tenderness, he picked up his phone again as it started ringing. Ego-Oyibo watched his face light up for another stranger, while her own disappointment sat unspoken in the room. The next few weeks became worse. Sometimes he left before sunrise and returned when she was already asleep. Sometimes he promised dinner and never came. Sometimes he sat beside her physically, but his mind remained trapped inside emails, calls, and contracts. At public events, people admired them. "You two are such a beautiful couple," a woman said at one gathering. Ego-Oyibo smiled politely, but inside she wanted to laugh at how little people knew. One night, after another crowded event, they returned home in silence until she finally spoke. "Do you remember when we used to sit outside and talk for hours?" she asked. Ikemefuna leaned back in his seat. "Life is different now." "Different is not the problem. Losing each other is the problem." He turned to her, already irritated. "Why do you keep making it sound like I'm doing something wrong by working hard?" "Because you are no longer just working hard," Ego-Oyibo said, her voice shaking. "You are disappearing." Ikemefuna frowned. "That is not fair." "Fair?" she asked softly. "Do you know what is unfair? Standing beside my husband in public, while feeling alone in private." He looked away, frustrated, and said nothing. The silence that followed felt louder than any argument. That night, as Ego-Oyibo lay awake, staring into darkness, while Ikemefuna slept with his phone beside him, a thought entered her heart that frightened her. For the first time, she was no longer just missing the man she married.
She was beginning to wonder if that man still existed at all. And before morning came, something happened that made her question even more deeply whether she still had a place in his new life.
The next morning, Ego-Oyibo followed the usual routine with a heavy heart. She prepared breakfast, arranged the living room, and tried to ignore the ache growing inside her. Ikemefuna came downstairs dressed sharply, speaking into his phone before he even sat down. "No, tell them I can only do 1 interview, not 2, he said, and move the brand shoot to later in the day." He ended the call and reached for his tea. Ego-Oyibo sat across from him, watching his face carefully. "Are you free this evening?" she asked. Ikemefuna looked up briefly. "Why?" "I was hoping we could spend time together, just the 2 of us." He hesitated. "I'm not sure. I may have dinner with some partners." She nodded slowly. "You may?" "Yes," he said, already checking another message. She lowered her eyes. "All right." He noticed her silence and sighed. "Ego, please understand, this is an important season for me." She looked back at him. "And what season is it for us?" Ikemefuna pushed back his chair. "We will talk later. I have to go." She stood quickly. "You always say later." He picked up his car keys. "Because later is when I have time." Ego-Oyibo swallowed hard. "And when will I stop being the thing you postpone?" Ikemefuna froze for a second, but the sound of his ringing phone saved him from answering. He took the call and walked out, leaving her standing there with tears she refused to let fall. That evening, he did not come home. Instead, she saw him on television, smiling under bright lights while a cheerful host praised his rising success. "You make it look so easy," the host said. Ikemefuna smiled confidently. "It takes sacrifice." Ego-Oyibo stared at the screen and whispered, "Yes, it does." But she knew she was the one paying the hidden price. Days later, another event was held in his honor, and Ego-Oyibo dressed beautifully because she knew people would be watching. She wore a calm smile and stood beside him as cameras flashed, but every compliment from strangers felt like a small wound. "Madam, you are enjoying," one guest joked. Ego-Oyibo forced a laugh. "We thank God." Yet, inside, her heart felt tired. During the event, she noticed how easily everyone could access Ikemefuna now except her. Important men pulled him aside for conversations, young admirers asked for photos, elegant women praised his work a little too warmly. At one point, Ego-Oyibo stood alone near a table while watching him laugh freely across the room. A woman standing beside her said, "Your husband belongs to the world now." The words sounded casual, but they struck Ego-Oyibo like a warning. When they finally returned home that night, she did not go to the bedroom immediately. She remained in the sitting room while Ikemefuna loosened his tie and reached for water. "We need to talk," she said quietly. He glanced at her with tired eyes. "Can it wait till morning?" "No," she answered. He sat down reluctantly. Ego-Oyibo folded her hands to stop them from shaking. "I am not happy, Ike." He looked at her without speaking. "I know life has changed, but I did not know change would make me feel like a visitor in my own marriage." Ikemefuna leaned back, exhausted. "What do you want me to do? Reject work? Stop growing?" "That is not what I want. I want you to see me again." He rubbed his forehead. "You are making this harder than it is." Ego-Oyibo stared at him in disbelief. "Harder than it is?" she repeated. "You think this pain is small because it is not happening to you?" Ikemefuna stood up impatiently. "I can't do this tonight." Her eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. "One day you will come home and this house will be quiet. Maybe then you will understand what I have been trying to tell you." Ikemefuna paused, but pride kept him from taking her words seriously. He simply turned and walked away. Ego-Oyibo sat alone for a long time after that, her face calm, but her heart breaking in ways words could no longer explain.
And before dawn touched the house, she made a decision that would change everything between them forever.
The morning Ikemefuna finally noticed the silence in his house began like every other busy day. His phone had been ringing since early dawn, and messages from assistants, partners, and reporters filled his screen. He walked downstairs, adjusting his jacket, already preparing for another long schedule. "Ego, I'll be late tonight," he called casually as he entered the living room. No answer came. He frowned slightly. "Ego?" The house remained quiet. At first, he assumed she was still sleeping, but something about the stillness felt strange. The dining table was neat, the curtains were open, and the room looked perfectly arranged. Yet the warmth that usually filled the house felt missing. As he walked closer to the table, his eyes fell on a small piece of paper lying carefully beside a cup. His heart slowed as he picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Ego-Oyibo's. His hands suddenly felt heavier as he began to read. "Ikemefuna, I waited for you for a long time. I waited when you were struggling, and I waited when success started taking you away from me. I believed that one day you would remember the small life we once shared. But the man I married is now too busy to notice when his home becomes empty. I am not leaving because I stopped loving you. I am leaving because I stopped recognizing myself beside the life you now live. I need space to find the happiness I lost while standing beside your success." Ikemefuna lowered the note slowly, his chest tightening as the quiet room seemed to grow even quieter. For the first time in many months, his phone rang and he ignored it. He looked around the beautiful house he had worked so hard to build. Everything was there: the large television, the elegant furniture, the awards placed proudly on the shelves. But suddenly, none of it felt important. He walked slowly through the rooms as if searching for something he had misplaced. Her favorite chair was empty, her soft laughter was gone, even the air felt unfamiliar. The applause of strangers that once excited him now echoed inside his mind like a hollow sound. He sat down heavily and stared at the trophies shining on the shelf. Just weeks ago, they had filled him with pride. Now they felt like reminders of something he had traded without realizing it. The memories began returning one after another. The small room where they once shared laughter, the simple meals they ate together, the nights when Ego-Oyibo encouraged him when the world ignored him. He remembered her voice saying, "One day people will celebrate you." She had been right, but he had forgotten the second part of her hope, that he would not forget the life they built together. Ikemefuna finally picked up his phone again, but this time it was not to answer reporters or business partners. His fingers trembled slightly as he searched for Ego-Oyibo's number. The call rang again and again before going unanswered. For the first time since success entered his life, fear quietly replaced his confidence. He leaned back and closed his eyes as a painful truth settled deeply inside him. Fame had filled his pockets and attracted admiration from the world, but it had quietly taken away the one person who loved him long before the applause began. In that moment of silence, Ikemefuna understood something that success had hidden from him for too long. Achievement means very little if the people who once believed in you are no longer there to share it. And as he sat alone in the quiet house that morning, he realized that the greatest victory in life is not the applause of strangers, it is the presence of the people who love you when the world is not watching. The moral lesson in this story is that you should not let success make you forget the people who believed in you when you had nothing. Fame and money can come and go, but love and true relationships are what give life real meaning. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching. See you in my next story.